Welcome to the commentary booth, where we watch and you guessed it, commentate on the week that was in movies and TV. I'm your host and play-by-play commentator Jamie Apps, and each week I'll be joined by a rotating cast of color commentators to help you find your next viewing treat. This week I'm joined by one of the creative minds behind the Renegades of Wrestling, the host of the Hey Hey It's the podcast, and a major Star Wars fan. Welcome to the show, Criss Fresh.
Thanks for having me on, mate. Any opportunity I get to talk Star Wars, I always jump at, and we're in a golden age of with Disney Plus of getting Marvel shows and Star Wars shows and stuff. Like you can see behind me, I'm a kid that never grew up, and if you had have said to me we would consistently just be getting Star Wars all the time, some people think that's a bad thing, and we can get into that. I don't subscribe to that. I'm a bring it, give it to me. I don't know how long I've got on this planet, so I want to take in as much as I can take in. I don't want to miss out. So yeah, it's really cool.
In terms of sort of the Star Wars movies, where do you fall on the prequel trilogy, original trilogy, and sequel trilogy now?
Yeah, I have always been obviously an OT fan, old enough to remember when Yub Nub was the song that closed out Return of the Jedi, and I was what I sort of describe myself as a prequel apologist, in that I never noticed they weren't perfect. You know, to me, it was just we were getting more Star Wars, and I didn't have the issues that a lot of people sort of had that grew up on the original trilogy. Like, to me, it sort of expanded what Star Wars was. I always joke with the Phantom Menace. I didn't know it kind of dragged until I saw it 3D. I think around 2012 they did a 3D release of the Phantom Menace, and I was sitting there and I didn't realize they'd added an extra lap in the pod race and stuff, and I got a bit tired during. I was like,
Yep.
It does drag a little bit, but I certainly have always enjoyed the prequels and think from a story standpoint they brought some of the best parts of Star Wars, which I think is coming out now, because you're seeing people nostalgic for stuff that I could have sworn for years we heard they hated.
Yep.
And with the sequels, like I understand that the prequels for an old guard of Star Wars fans were sort of like a heartbreak for them in, you know, it wasn't what they wanted from Star Wars. And I was on the ride with the sequels until The Rise of Skywalker, and it got me, which was the final one. I am a storyteller by nature, and I'll go on the journey if you get me to the destination. And I'm not sure they landed it. I think you could feel that there were different creative forces at play, and there wasn't a cohesive vision of what they were going to be. That doesn't mean I don't hate them. It's just, if I'm going to choose to go back and watch Star Wars, I'm putting the Rise of Skywalker last. But by all means, if people got from it what they got from it, I'm sort of one of those fans of like, good for you. You know, like, there's so much Star Wars now for us to choose from. If one doesn't work out for me, it's fine. Like, there's a million other things that we can now go take in. And, you know, I'm one of the people that loved Solo, and a lot of people dislike Solo. You know, and unfortunately it didn't do well at the box office, so we're not going to see where that could have gone. But for me, I really enjoyed that movie, and I wasn't jarred by Alden playing a young Han Solo and stuff like that, where some people couldn't get over the actor switch, which I can understand. But yeah, I don't know, I'm all for it. And with Kenobi, what I love is we're seeing people caught up in the Anakin and Obi-Wan story. And while I will concede that some of the acting and the lines are on the nose in the prequels,
Yes.
To me, that's part of their charm. Like, like George Lucas writing a love story, perhaps not his strongest suit. But and some of Hayden's delivery wasn't great, but I never disliked it. I didn't even dislike Jake Lloyd playing a little excitable kid. I understand that people didn't want to see that version of Darth Vader. But that's the story that they told, and I chose to accept it. So sort of seeing, and I'm into the animation too. So seeing like the Clone Wars and Rebels and the prequels and all of this stuff sort of connecting now, and even they bring some stuff from the books and the comic books in, seeing all of that sort of come together in a way that if you haven't checked out that stuff, it doesn't affect your experience. And if you do check it out, you go, cool. I just think it's a golden age that we're in. What about you? Like, where are you with the Star Wars saga?
So for me,
Skywalker saga.
Yeah, for me, the original trilogy is always going to be the pinnacle of the series. I was kind of like you with the prequels. When they came out, I didn't see the big issue with them. It's more been in the later years on like Star Wars Day, going back and rewatching them and being like, okay, there are definitely some issues with these movies. But there are great points in there as well.
Attack of the Clones is a bumpy watch. Like, yes. I like some of it, but I concede. It's like, oof.
But like you said, I think there are some very key moments in those movies that then add to the series that we're getting now, even adding to the original trilogy. And then with the sequels, I loved Episode 7. But I think that was kind of just because it was basically one of the original trilogy movies again, just with new characters and refreshed. And then I think
with the prequels and even the Force Awakens, like it's so tied up in the journey and excitement of new Star Wars again.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting the reveals and the magazine covers, and they're doing toy launch nights and all of this stuff, and it's hard to differentiate your enjoyment of the movie from the experience of leading up to it. Yep. And it was the same like leading into the Phantom Menace and then leading into the Force Awakens. It's like, I don't know, I enjoyed the ride. It was good fun.
Yep. But like you said, with the sequel trilogy, I think the biggest issue there was the lack of a cohesive vision for those three movies with a single arc. Whereas like I feel like we got the second one, and then the third one was trying to fix the issues with the second one rather than telling its own story, which kind of let it down a little bit. But yeah, now that we're getting series and all sorts of spin-offs, I absolutely loved Rogue One. I think that is probably my favorite of the new Star Wars content. But yeah, now that we're getting all of that, it's a super exciting time to be a Star Wars fan. And like you said, with Disney Plus, it's like we're alternating month by month. We're either getting Star Wars content or Marvel content, or this past month we've had a bit of an overlap.
Yeah, like Miss Marvel's like we won't get into that, but that's so different, but it's delightful. Like, yeah, how can you not be charmed by that? And even from a Marvel perspective, you look at it and go, if you don't like Miss Marvel, well, there was Falcon and Winter Soldier. And if you didn't like that, there was WandaVision. If you didn't like that, there was Loki, and it seems like Star Wars is maybe going to head down that path I really enjoyed Book of Boba Fett. It wasn't for everybody, but if you didn't like that, there was Kenobi. And if you didn't like Kenobi, there's going to be Andor. And if you don't like Andor, there's going to be Ahsoka. And if you don't like Ahsoka, like all these, there's going to be the Acolyte. Like all these series are sort of, if you can't, I view fandom like this, and even in terms of professional wrestling and stuff, if you can't find something that you enjoy, it's probably time to let it go and walk away.
Maybe you're not a fan of this particular thing anymore.
Yeah, you've moved on, and like me with WWE, I don't get the enjoyment that I got from it when I was younger. But there's AEW, there's New Japan, there's independent wrestling, there's Australian wrestling. There's plenty of wrestling for me to enjoy. It's just not what I once liked. But if there was a point where it was like I'm not into wrestling anymore, I'd walk away and watch something else.
Yeah, I'm not going to hate watch something.
Yeah, exactly. But people do, you know, and my son's about to do a run-in. People do, and I don't understand that at all. But yeah, I don't know. I think we're super lucky in what we're getting at the moment.
Yes. So, like for this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different with the commentary booth. Rather than doing split topics, we're just going to deep dive onto the Obi-Wan Kenobi series that we've just gone through on Disney Plus. What did you think of it as a whole on a surface level before we dive in deeper?
Yeah, sure. I it wasn't perfect. You know, I felt it was inconsistent. And some
Especially
of the stuff
pacing wise, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. It just felt like it moved weirdly at times. But I also felt it gave me some of my favorite recent moments in Star Wars, which is so Star Wars to do. I look at some of it and go, I don't know about that. And then they get me and it's like, oh, how can I stay mad at you? And yeah, I like sometimes I'd see something and go, you know, what was that about? And that moved weirdly, or it transitioned into this really strangely. But then I also go, Ewan McGregor's a one-man show. I can watch that dude play Obi-Wan Kenobi and do anything. You know, he's amazing. So it was hard to separate his incredible performance from perhaps at times the show being a touch clunky.
Yep. Yeah, I think the biggest issue I had with it was, like I said, the pacing. And I think that's kind of just an issue with the Disney Plus series as a whole at the moment. Like they're really hard steadfast on this 6 episodes for a series. And I think at times that's hurting them because they're trying to play it slow in the beginning and establish what's happening, who all these characters are. And then by the time they've done that, they've only got 2 episodes left and they kind of just rush to a finish, which is kind of what this show felt like it did.
Yeah, you're so right. Like you get that anxiety of how they're going to wrap this up. Because you're thinking in your head, there's a million things to do and they haven't done it. And Boba Fett definitely had that feel with it. And see, with The Mandalorian, we know that's so successful, it's just going to continue. So there's not quite the panic of are they going to get there, because there's going to be seasons and seasons of it. You know, I think they've announced season 4 is in the works. So that's fine. But with Kenobi and even with Book of Boba Fett, they were very finite of it's probably just going to be a one shot, unless they're super successful. And I sort of looked at Kenobi of, if this was a movie, how would have this played as a movie? And I'm not 100% sure. Like they had the story, you know, they certainly had the story of Princess Leia's kidnapped. It's going to draw Kenobi off planet. And he gets lured into a planet, but I know we'll get into it. Like the problem is I'm messy. I always jump all over the place, but you know, they had ideas. I just don't think they quite tied them together. You know, like I like the concept of Reva, and I like the idea that she was a youngling that somehow survived Order 66, and she's been playing this long con to get Vader, and she uses Obi-Wan as bait to get into the perfect position to take out Darth Vader. That on paper is amazing.
Yes.
I just don't know that they executed it perfectly. You know, like it was like, I don't know, like sometimes I'd get to a point you'd be like, really, like this was your grand execution of this plan that you've been plotting since you were a child, like, you know, like, and you didn't have opportunities before. Like, although I always go, they just Star Wars'd it, you know, like it's fine, like not everything has to be perfect. But yeah, I think we were right to have high expectations of this, with Deborah Chow helming it and Ewan McGregor being in it and everything like that. And it's such a big name character, you know, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I just, it certainly wasn't perfect, but I feel the good far outweighed the bad.
Yep. And like you said with The Mandalorian, I think the success of that is because it's tied into the mainline Luke Skywalker saga, but it's kind of slightly off track as well, so they can be a little bit more experimental, and if the story is successful and continues, it's okay. Whereas when they're using someone like Boba Fett or Obi-Wan, they do have a set time period where they need to set these stories so that they don't overlap with the movies and cause much more issues.
Yeah, the weight seems to crush it a little bit. Like, and I think the problem with Kenobi was there were so many people with their arms folded. And even not me with my arms folded, but even I was like, there's a lot of lore that's up in the air here. You know, like when I'd talk with friends about a potential Kenobi series, you know, lover boy Lockie Hendricks is a massive Star Wars fan, and he and I will talk about Star Wars nonstop. And it becomes, you start debating and going, you know, how do you have Vader and Kenobi cross paths? But then I was thinking to A New Hope, Vader doesn't say, I haven't felt this presence since Mustafa. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he just says, I haven't felt this presence since. So it was open-ended that he could have potentially met Kenobi in between. I was always open-minded to that, you know, and even I was once the learner, but now I am the master, you know, once again, we saw it play out, you know, it certainly could lend itself that they were going to have a confrontation. So I never had issues with that, but I was curious, you know, Leia in the hologram, you know, you served my father in the Clone Wars, indicating she's never met this dude, where she went on quite the romp with him, but they they got there in the end, and
yeah, they put
they
that
tied
one
that
little
knot
line in to
quickly.
make sure.
Yeah, they tied that knot quickly, right at the end. Like, and even, you know, jumping around, you know, even things such as Obi-Wan Kenobi saying to Luke, you know, Darth Vader murdered your father. He's not lying, because Anakin says, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did.
Yep.
So when, from a certain point of view, when Obi-Wan Kenobi is telling Luke that, he's just repeating what Anakin Skywalker himself said.
Yeah, like I really enjoyed the series. I was overall very happy with it. It was just, yeah, it was that pacing was a little bit weird, but apart from that, I really enjoyed the majority of it, and there were some pretty amazing moments that will stick out in my mind as things I need to, either people need to make sure they've seen, or in future series I think they will be referenced a lot more.
Yeah, I think, were you a fan of the animation at all, or?
I've only watched little bits and pieces of it. I haven't watched the full series of Clone Wars and Rebels, but I've heard they are
So
very, very good.
yeah, like you've got to be patient because they're kid shows, but you know, but I'm a big enough fan that I've got that patience. And in Rebels, there's a showdown between Ahsoka and Darth Vader, and
Mhm.
she actually cracks the mask, and they do the cool blend of Matt Lanter's voice, who voiced Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars, with James Earl Jones's voice, and they took that concept in the final episode, and I thought did it really well. And I think just that last episode alone, although it felt like boom, 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 we're hitting you with moment after moment after moment, they were all so cool that it's going to end up being amazing Star Wars lore. I think, like, just that Obi-Wan Anakin battle, like it, it was so emotional. You know, it's not as flippy and everything as Revenge of the Sith, and you know, it's not the slow dance that they do in A New Hope. This was just an emotional thing, and Hayden Christensen, I thought, did an amazing job once that mask sort of got split. And I think even the most hardened prequel haters would have to go, that was a really cool moment between Obi-Wan Kenobi and his Padawan.
Oh, that scene in particular in that episode is gonna stick in my mind for a very long time. And I did read that that was kind of a mirroring of a scene in Rebels. So
Mm.
I loved that, and I liked that kind of that then ties into the Luke Vader confrontation where kind of Luke was the only one strong enough to fully unmask Vader
Yeah.
and show the Anakin underneath, but the the blending
That's
of
an
the
interesting call.
voices was
Yeah.
amazing. That gave that scene so much more power and depth to it.
Yeah. And even the wheezing when Kenobi attacks the voice box, and you sort of, because it, it, and I felt this with Rogue One as well. I know some people didn't like snippy Vader with funny comments like, try not to choke on your aspirations, director, and stuff like that. But I was always like, but that's what Anakin would have said,
Yeah, it
and
was the true
I,
Anakin
yeah,
slipping out.
and I think they did a good job of helping us in our heads go, oh yeah, Anakin is Darth Vader. Like the Anakin we saw in the prequels, it makes sense that he is Darth Vader, because when you watch the prequels and you watch the OT, it is quite a striking difference of how did this hot-headed young man become almost this stoic sort of authoritarian ruler. It's quite a maturing for Anakin, you know, but I think we see that we sort of have gotten to see this blending with Rogue One, with the animation, and particularly with Kenobi. And I just really like how now Hayden's Anakin feels like it is Darth Vader.
Yep. And like you were mentioning, with sort of people suddenly being nostalgic, I think Hayden Christensen was that weird one thing where it was like everybody seemed to hate his performance in the prequels, but then when he was announced as coming back for this series, it was like it seemed like everybody was super excited to have him back, and I was like, hang on, didn't we all hate his performance?
Yeah, but I was so happy for him, because it's sort of like it wasn't their fault. Like this was what was written for them. And like Natalie Portman's not a bad actress, you know, but Padme delivers some clunky lines, you know, and I don't even think that Hayden Christensen's a bad actor. He was just given questionable dialogue and a tough role to play. Like Leonardo DiCaprio famously had auditioned for Anakin Skywalker. I'm not, look, I'm sure he would have been better because Leo's amazing, but it was still tough to deliver some of that stuff.
Yeah, like if a script is has issues, I don't think any actor can make it better if is massive holes in it, unless they are someone with the power to be like, no, I'm going to change this line, and a director is going to listen to it. But Star Wars is George Lucas's baby, so whether he'd have been happy to change lines on the fly is a whole nother story.
And I always say I'm with him. I don't like sand either. It does get everywhere. It's annoying. Like who likes coming out of the water at the beach? Sand sticks to you and stuff. It's very annoying. I'm with him. I don't. He gets a bad rap on that.
And we mentioned Reva, the new character that's sort of introduced in this series, played by Moses Ingram. What did you think of her arc and story development in the show?
I thought her performance was really good. I just don't feel. I felt it's that Kenobi inconsistency that I think was noticeable in it. In her pacing was a bit off, but that's not the actress's fault. That was definitely a script and pacing thing. Of it, it just went to 0 to 60. Like I'm still not 100% sure of her motivations of going to Tatooine and what she was going to do. Like I understand they wanted her to see that she had become what she hated the most when she was going to kill a child,
Mm-hmm.
but it just felt not not fleshed out. Like it felt like Reva needed to have a discussion with somebody going, I have to stop the child of Anakin Skywalker because I see what they become. But and just something like that. Then you go, all right, the character's motivation is she's going to kill this kid because she knows who he is and she wants to stop another version of this guy coming along. Look, it's not great logic, but you can go, I understand she's being unreasonable, but there was none of that. She just sort of went from mortally wounded on that planet to, and left alive, bizarrely. Like, everybody gets left alive in Star Wars, and it's a huge mistake. Kill these people. If they're burning on Mustafar, kill them. If they've got a cracked helmet and you've dinted their head in with a lightsaber, kill them right there. And
yes, that was another moment
in the stomach, stab them, and just make sure they're dead. Nobody makes sure anybody's dead in Star Wars. Even if you cut them in half and they fall down a shaft, just double check and stab them again just to make sure. But yeah, that's another thing I don't like about the sequels is I love Palpatine, but I didn't like his return. But yeah, I just felt the ending to her arc wasn't great, but I like the idea that of where the character could go from here. And I'm not one of those people that gets upset about force sensitive people being out in the galaxy. You know, people seem to have a big problem with that, but it's a huge galaxy. It's fine. I understand there was a coolness that there were no Jedi apart from Yoda and Obi-Wan, and they unlock Luke because he's the last hope, and maybe Leia's going to be the other, and it seems small and everything. But people also have to be realists for Star Wars to survive and go on into the future. We have to expand the idea of who was around and what happened. And it would make sense that there were other Jedi that weren't all killed in Order 66 and they went hiding and stuff like that. So, like, with Reva, I like the idea of the Grand Inquisitor and the other Inquisitors not liking her because they know she was a Padawan, and they sort of look down upon that because they're just force sensitives that were grabbed from a young age and raised in a Sith. And she's sort of like just trying to fight her way. I just don't feel there wasn't enough time to tell that story properly. It's there. I just don't know that they got it. What did you think?
I agree. Like, I think the ending of her story arc was a little bit like unfinished, kind of. Like,
Yep.
she kind of just leaves. It's like, oh, I imagine that's going to maybe like tee her up for a future series where she's helping establish the rebel forces and things like that with the path, maybe. But yeah, like I loved the introduction of her and the idea of her being a youngling that survived Order 66. I thought that was a great twist when that was revealed. Like, she went from, okay, she's one of our key hurdles and enemies to get past, and then Vader will be the big bad at the end. But then, yeah, halfway through the series, it twists and she's kind of somewhat on our side, but also still trying to take out Luke.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's just a little inconsistent, you know, like, so she was so driven by her quest for revenge on Anakin that she did horrible and terrible things just to get close to him. I can let it go. It's just not the best storytelling, you know. She was too close to him. Like, it didn't even feel like she'd never met him before. It felt like she had met him, you know. And it was like, okay, if you've been around him, and like I would have liked the idea of she pushed through and got up because she finally wanted to get close to him, but it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like, you know, she had dealt with him and all of this. So I would have liked a bit of mythos building, perhaps, where you never see Vader out of the castle. You know, like, you don't get around him. Like, the Grand Inquisitor is as far as you can get. Like, he is middle management and you never get to the top, and you definitely don't get to Palpatine, who's the top. But they didn't do that. You know, like, it seems like Vader pops around for a coffee every so often, and I just feel that they just a little bit of tightening of the story would have made it a bit more coherent, I think.
And like you mentioned, the moment where she is stabbed in the stomach, that was a bit weird. Like again, like you said, nobody
Poor
dies in
Qui-Gon.
Star Wars, even though they.
No, Qui-Gon took that gut shot, and that was it. He was Force Ghost City, and you know he well, Darth Maul takes it to the gut and then gets sliced in half and down the thing. But yeah, like the Grand Inquisitor and Reva sort of taking gut shots and living is interesting. But we have seen, to get super nerdy, you know, we have seen Fennec Shan get shot, and Boba Fett took her to the mods and got that fixed. So you don't want to get shot in real life, people. If a stomach is one of the worst places you can get shot. But apparently in Star Wars, if you get stabbed or shot in the stomach, it's actually could be worse.
I guess yeah. Their theory is a lightsaber like immediately cauterizes the wound, so it's bad, but not mortal.
There's always an explanation. It's like sometimes in wrestling terms, when we're doing creative, I just sit there and I go, sometimes wrestling just happens. And and I do the same approach sometimes with Star Wars of we can arm wrestle over the nuances forever, but is it a deal breaker in the overall story? Probably not. I can understand people getting outraged, particularly, you know, unfortunately, because it's an African American female, you know, that they go, you know, she got to live, and it's like, yeah, but what about the white Grand Inquisitor? He lived too from a similar situation. You know, everybody just remain calm. You know, I'm interested to see where the character goes, because I think Moses did a really cool performance, and I love the idea of a youngling out there that witnessed the horrors of Order 66. I'm still not quite sure how she survived it. I know she said she played dead. There's like, as if Anakin would know whether he killed her or not.
I feel like Anakin would have the ability to be like, hang on, there's still someone in this room that's not dead.
Yeah, I guess like it would be very Anakin to not be threatened by her. Of like, no, I don't care. Like, you know, she's plotting against me. I'll just kill her when, you know, it suits me. But once again, they certainly didn't flesh that out. Because as you said, they limit it by 6 episodes. Yeah, it feels like these things maybe need to be 10, or at least longer episodes, perhaps, because it's like they say they go 45 minutes, but there's 18 minutes of credits on Disney Plus series.
Every time.
Yeah, you see that length, and it's not how long the episode is going to go, because those credits go forever. So yeah, I don't know. Well, like we'll see where she goes.
I suspect we may get, or I would love to see we get Reva crossing over with maybe like the video games and Cal Kestis somewhat at some point popping up.
Did I see there's rumors that he may get his own series?
I think there is rumors, but yeah, I don't think there's been anything confirmed, but I think that would be a really cool idea, since that was such a well-received game, so to have that character come over.
He's a good actor. Like, I tapped out on Gotham, but when the early episodes of Gotham, when he came in as Jerome and stuff, I thought the dude was super compelling. I think he went on to become the Joker, but I was out. But yeah, but I think he'd be perfectly fine in carrying a series, and you can't question. I know video games are viewed as something, but like that industry is so big and makes so much money that the movie industry and TV industry shouldn't be looking down on video games. If you look at finances, it should be the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Especially like there is a Fallen Order 2 coming out, so to then cross him over into these Disney Plus series, I think that would benefit both sides. Like, I can't see there being any sort of downside to doing that.
No, and now that the pandemic sort of lifted and we're not restricted with like COVID productions, because you could see it, like some of these shows, like the Marvel shows and this, they feel smallish. Like the volume's cool, which is, for those that don't know, it's these giant screens that they use to give an immersive background. So as opposed to green screen, when the actors are performing now, they can see depth and in their background and stuff, and that has helped greatly because they couldn't have big sets. they couldn't have 1 million people on them just with the pandemic, and now that's sort of lifted and it's all open, which is good news because I think they should completely reshoot the Flash, which is another story. But yeah, it's hopefully with these things, we'll start to see a bit more of an expansion. Question I have for you is, so we've seen some cool Star Wars TV, and it appears at the end of next year, Taika Waititi's Star Wars movie is going to come out. Do you think there's an appetite for Star Wars in the cinemas still? Or has Star Wars now transitioned to an episodic formula?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there would be an appetite for a movie still, like, especially one with Taika's name attached to it. I think that would be one that would get people excited again. But is that movie like a mainline one, or is that another kind of side story? I think it's a side story.
It's a side story. So it's taking place after Return of the Jedi, but they haven't said when exactly. And sort of Taika Waititi has sort of said, you have to move away from the main characters and still tell a story. That's all we really know about it at the moment. It seems like, which is, I guess they have to get out of there, that, you know, with Patty Jenkins' movie Rogue Squadron, believe that's coming out when I see it, and all of that, they talk about, it seems like they want to swim in the waters of post Return of the Jedi and not go back, which is fair enough. You know, it's hard to go back. So it seems like we're sort of going to be in that sequel-y era, which is, as a Star Wars fan, it's hard because I've got such a problem with Palpatine's return. And, you know, you always see that classic clip of Oscar Isaac's going, Poe Dameron going, somehow he's returned. That's the explanation for how he returned, you know, and the cloning and stuff. And I think they shot themselves in the foot a touch by turning Snoke into this complete joke.
Yes,
where
very much.
He was just in a jar and it meant nothing. Like, it really felt like The Rise of Skywalker sort of took a crap on stuff that came before it in a lot of ways as well, which from my perspective, it was like, hey, I bought into your journey. You know, like, I was on this ride and you're telling me I shouldn't have cared because it didn't mean anything. And I think, I know it sounds silly, but I was intrigued by who this dude was that tricked Leia and everybody into thinking he was somebody they could trust. And he corrupted this child knowing who he was. And Ben Solo, you know, ends up becoming Kylo Ren. There was so much good story they could tell, and they dismissed it in The Rise of Skywalker with, I was every voice in your head, and there's a couple of Snokes just floating around in a jar. And the cloning stuff concerns me a little bit because I don't think that's the strongest aspect of Star Wars. You know, I like the clones in the prequels. And I loved Tamara Morrison doing the cameo of a destitute clone begging for money in Kenobi. Because for those that don't know, the clones were sort of deemed passe and they went for real recruitment with stormtroopers, and clones were sort of shoved to the side. So sort of seeing a clone with a long beard because they age out because they've got accelerated aging. Yes, I'm a nerd. You know, they've got accelerated aging. Seeing a clone there and like Kenobi seeing it and sort of it haunting him when he saw it, I thought was a really cool little moment. And they're able to do that because they didn't corrupt the idea of what it was. And unfortunately, you know, to get into the sequels and where things could go, unfortunately, it's messy because Snoke means nothing. And, you know, I felt with The Rise of Skywalker, the story they could have told, and this is just me, is finally a Skywalker ascended to the throne. You know, at the end of The Last Jedi, Kylo Ren is in charge of everything.
Mhm.
And there's finally an out of control Skywalker that is in control of the galaxy. And how do you stop that? Instead, he caves and becomes, second fiddle to Palpatine immediately. And they sort of reduce. And yes, Ben Solo had the redemption and everything. There was some cool moments in that movie. I certainly don't say that there wasn't. I just think they hurt so much storytelling. They could have done, they could have done a young Ben Solo show. They could have done anything. And like, if they do a young Ben Solo show, or if Ben Solo or Luke's training of people comes into TV and Snoke appears, are we meant to think it's just Palpatine controlling this flesh puppet? Like it becomes weird and awkward. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure how they, like, if Taika Waititi gets into that, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know with Patty Jenkins' movie. I think they saw Wonder Woman 84 like we all did and panicked because the first Wonder Woman movie is amazing and you can't believe DC got a movie right. And then you see this mess of a sequel and you're like, oh wow, what happened?
Yeah, how
and
did
it
we go
feels like
from
Lucas, yeah, and it felt like Lucasfilm did that of, oh no, like, because Colin Trevorrow famously was meant to do The Rise of Skywalker, or it was going to be called Jewel of the Fates. There's a script out there of his treatment, and the story is like, yes, he had a movie called The Book of Henry that they didn't love. That's apparently controversial. I haven't seen it, but also those dinosaur movies are not good. I love the original Jurassic Park. It's an amazing movie. It's a historical movie. These movies, I get sucked into seeing them every single time, and they're no good.
it's
They
always, oh,
make
cool,
money.
dinosaurs. Maybe not.
Yeah, they make money, but they're no good. And I just hope that somehow Star Wars can sort of steady the ship a little bit and not panic either. Like with Solo, Lord and Miller getting 80% through the movie and them going, oh no, this is too funny, we've got to replace him. And it's like,
Yeah,
dudes, like what?
yeah.
like,
Let's
I like Solo and I love Ron Howard, but strange move.
yeah, to get so far into the production of something and then totally change directions is a very strange choice. Like you said, I think they need to just settle on a story, be happy with the story they've got, and commit. Let's make this. If it's success, awesome. If not, well, it's a side story. It's kind of inconsequential.
Yeah, like and with the sequels, like there were so many cool concepts that they had. The idea that you know Finn was force sensitive and was gonna like take these stormtroopers that were grabbed when they were kids and rise up against the people that grabbed them. Cool story. You know, Kylo Ren leading the galaxy, and he's against the Sith and the Jedi, and he's just going to prove it all wrong and tear it all down. Cool story. Rey being this person, like Rey was cool. She didn't need to be a Palpatine.
No,
She didn't
no,
have to be somebody. She just could have been, but like it was, and I refuse to believe that they had that idea from the beginning. I know they tried telling us that they did. There is no way that that was the
no.
idea. She might have been a Kenobi or something in the original ideas, but I don't think it was meant to be Palpatine. And I think even with Palpatine bringing him back, it would have been more effective to try a resurrection as opposed to, and I've listened to the audiobook because I'm too lazy to read. The story is, I don't know if you know this, Darth Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi throws him down the shaft, and the blue energy shoots up. We've all seen it a zillion times. In canon, he spirit jumps as he's falling down that shaft into a clone body on Exegol. And that's how he got there. When I heard that, I was like, not for
What?
me. I'm just choosing to ignore it. Like, if you like it and it's for you, cool. It made my head explode. It was too much. I don't like it. But I'm not angry. I'm just Mm-mm.
It's just a weird choice to be like, okay, this is how we're going to keep this character alive.
Probably didn't. I think it would have made more sense to sort of do a Sith ritual where you could bring him back from the dead.
Mhm.
At least that way you're not diminishing the end of Return of the Jedi. He did die.
Yes, yes, it's a
Instead, now he didn't. Like technically in canon, when you watch that, and the Ewoks are dancing, and Lando's going to hook up with an Ewok, and they're having their big clap party at the end, and it's all this celebration. He's not dead, and that's the wrong type of retconning to me.
Mhm.
Um, it's it would have been far better that there were Sith acolytes that are bringing him back from the dead because they know how to. We've seen Force ghosts. It would make sense that you could bring a dude back from the dead. And they didn't go there. But maybe one day we'll get comic books of what George Lucas would have done. Maybe we'll get it of what Colin Trevorrow would have done. This stuff always comes out eventually. And you get to see alternative takes, and I always say create your own head canon. Whatever works for you. I choose to believe that Palpatine did not spirit jump to another planet when he's getting thrown down that shaft. I'm just not looking. Like,
Yep.
cover my ears. I didn't hear that. Like, it's okay.
I do like the idea now, though, that like we have explored this time period between the prequels and the OG trilogy quite a bit now with these TV shows. I do like the idea of now, if we're moving forward, we're going to have some stories in the gap between the OG and the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Like, I how did you feel? I like when I watched Book of Boba Fett, that Luke episode. Like the
Mhm.
technology jumped from the final of The Mandalorian where you saw Luke, and it emotionally got me, but I understood that the technology was a bit janky. You're
Mhm.
looking at it and going, But when I saw it in the Book of Boba Fett, it was like, wow, like this is incredible. Like I don't get weirded out by the uncanny valley thing. Like it to me it looked amazing, and I was just like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Like, and it wasn't like shaded in dark or anything. Luke Skywalker was young and in broad daylight and was training Grogu. Like
Mhm.
it was extraordinary.
Yeah, that was an amazing sequence. I was like, whoa, wow. It's, yes,
Like
like you said, such a vast jump in such a short period of time.
Yeah, and I can only imagine where it's going to head. Look, we could get into a technology discussion, but I think it's dangerous. Like we've seen with Tom Cruise deepfakes and stuff. But curious, if you had a choice and you could either do content that jumps into the future, past the rise of Skywalker, or goes right back old Republic style, or I guess they're doing the High Republic is what they're sort of calling it in the books at the moment. What would be your preference of time frame on a TV show or movie?
I would like to go back to the old High Republic era and explore that a bit more. Um,
Mm.
I think, yeah, going after the prequels is probably going to happen at some point anyway. So I'd prefer to go backwards before we go forwards.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, I want to see an era where, you know, the the Sith are strong. There are many Jedi. They're getting around with their cool top knots and everything that's going on, and we're seeing that sort of stuff. Like I remember back in the day playing Knights of the Old Republic, and just thinking it was really cool, being in that setting. And I look, I am curious to see Rey establish a new Jedi Order.
Hmm.
I think that could be interesting, and I have no doubt Daisy Ridley will return to Star Wars because they all come back. Adam Driver, I'm sure, will appear at some point in something Star Warsy, even though you would think there's no way he will. But yeah, I agree with you. I think going back, that's why the Acolyte sort of interests me in that's going to go back. I don't know how far it's going to go back, but it's definitely pre Phantom Menace, from what I understand.
Yeah. Um, in terms of Obi-Wan, what did you think of the dynamics between Obi-Wan and young Leia?
yeah, it was interesting. Like, I liked young Leia. I know people
Mhm.
hate kid actors. It's hard when you're a kid actor, isn't it? Like, it's
Especially when
I
they're
think,
playing someone as iconic as Princess Leia.
yeah, and I think, and I think the kid did a really good job. It, I liked it. What did you think? Did oh, I've never subscribed to Obi-Wan Kenobi having a thing for Padme. I was always just like, Anakin's a crazy jealous dude, there's nothing in it. But the way he spoke of Padme, like when they're in
Mm,
the back of that rider, when they're hitching a ride, it was like, I
maybe.
think maybe he did
Mm,
have a thing for Padme. Like, I don't know. Like, it's a weird, dynamic. Although I did love Kenobi, like, especially at the end, talking to her about her parents and sort of giving her an indication of what they were like, and sort of admitting that, and him sort of not wanting to get too close but not being able to help himself. I really enjoyed that interplay. And now we've got, because we've always had that strong Luke ridiculously bonding to Kenobi, where the most, the memes of lives with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, moves on in 10 seconds, Kenobi dies and he's devastated in the Falcon. But it was cool to see Kenobi have a relationship with Leia. I really enjoyed it.
Yep. I loved the way they costumed her as well, with things that kind of were variations on her iconic hairstyle. She had her brown like boots because her mentor wears them. They gave her the holster, which was a really cool moment. And yeah, in that last episode, she has the all white outfit, the brown boots, her holster, her hair was up in the buns. I was like, yeah, okay,
Mm.
she's definitely Leia.
And like, they're so smart. Like I'm a toy collector. I can't help myself. But you see Lola, and it was like how I felt when I saw BB-8, and I was like, oh, I want one of them. Like that thing, that thing is cool. I won't get one because they end up sitting on the shelf and you never use them. But yeah, I I liked how they portrayed Leia as strong and confident. But also she's a kid too, like she makes mistakes and everything like that. Some of the chase scenes were a bit questionable. Like, it was like, come on, Kenobi, like, she's running off from you at the market, and like, it was almost comical at how slow he was at trying to chase his kid down in this dire situation. um but I thought I liked the swerve of, you went into the show thinking it was going to be Luke based, and then it was Leia based. I'm a huge Jimmy Smits's Bail Organa fan, so it was cool to see him there. He could probably use a touch of de-aging. It was looking a bit rough, the old Jimmy Smits. But yeah, I liked getting to see Alderaan, and you see how pretty that planet was. Who didn't yell out "Flea" the second he appeared on the screen? It was, that's Flea. And yeah, like that, there was so much good in this. um i I just, I think you're right. I think it could have used a few more episodes.
Yep. But these Star Wars series, they love a good slow chase scene. I think in Boba Fett recently we had that speeder chase that felt like the slowest speeder chase of all time through the town.
I don't know. I didn't notice, but everybody was. I take everybody's word for it. Like, I was watching it, didn't particularly notice, but everybody was like, "Oh, that speeder chase was really slow," and it was like, yeah, I guess it was slow. I don't know. I didn't mind the cyberpunk teen gang. But yeah, it's I, it was interesting that they didn't go down the path of classic bounty hunters grabbing Leia, and they like had some bad Flea and some cronies sort of grab her, because I'm surely it would have been tempting to sort of tap into somebody that we knew, like a Bosk, or I don't think they do IG-88, because IG-11 was so iconic in The Mandalorian, it sort of surpassed IG-88, or even doing Cad Bane, because they just had him in the Book of Boba Fett. It would have been easy to chuck him in this and had him as the person that grabbed Leia. To sort of resist that urge was kind of cool. Like, they just did something different.
Yeah, I do like that they do have a little bit of restraint in terms of tying things in. Like, yes,
That
Star Wars has that issue of everything has to be connected and makes
Rogue
this
One
gigantic
still
universe feel very small.
Rogue One still has the most on the nose cameo in all of Star Wars when Dr. Evazan and Walrus Man Ponda Baba are walking through and they shoulder bump and they go, "You better watch yourself." It's like, oh, like I boo that cameo. But like it doesn't matter. I laugh at it. But it was like that cameo was like that was egregious. Like I can handle C3PO and R2 popping up and stuff like that. I like that sort of stuff. But those two just happening to be there, it was like, no, you didn't need that one.
Yeah, there are some where it's like that didn't need to be there, but I think they did a good job in this one of showing restraint. And yes, we do have that issue of the universe does feel small, but they didn't overreach, which was nice.
But I always say, like, I get when people say that, you know, like, oh, it's so small and everything's kept and stuff. But at what point does it not feel like Star Wars? Like, do you go too far out that it doesn't feel like Star Wars? And then if it doesn't feel like Star Wars, why call it Star Wars? You know, we've already had a Joker movie where the main character didn't have to be the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you watched for Joker, and that could have been anybody. It would have been a great movie. It didn't have to be the Joker. You know, I don't know that I want to see a Star Wars movie that could just be any movie.
Yes.
You know, because it's so tied in with the music, with the moments. Like it doesn't need a Skywalker. I like that they work a lightsaber into everything. I've personally got no issue with that, but I can understand why people can't stand it. But it's like lightsabers are cool. Who doesn't want to see a lightsaber? But I think, and that was another criticism I had of the sequel trilogy, was the lack of classic aliens. It was cool that they introduced new aliens, but it's like, what, did all the old aliens just completely disappear? Like we went on Canto Bight, a casino planet that had 1 billion different creatures. What, there's not a hammerhead in there for a second? Or
there was no crossover ones.
No, they were all new. And it was like, it doesn't feel Star Warsy if you don't have those classic cameos. And that's why when you watch The Mandalorian and, you know, the mayor or Book of Boba Fett and the mayor is a hammerhead, or, you know, you go into the bar and you see the bartender and it's like, I know that alien, you know, it helps it feel Star Warsy. And I don't want Star Wars to not feel like Star Wars. I'm not into Star Trek, but I do hear sometimes with some of the Star Trek stuff that people go, oh, it doesn't feel like Star Trek.
Yep.
And I don't want that feeling with Star Wars.
Yeah, and I think at this point now, we all know that Star Wars is going to have connections back to the Skywalkers and this thread that runs through the movies. So if that's annoying you, like we said at the start, maybe Star Wars isn't for you anymore.
Like, and I don't know if people have Googled stuff, but there's lots of stuff to watch. Like, there's so much content to watch. I'm never going to see it all. Like you know, you cover this stuff. Like, there's a zillion shows to watch. Like, you know, be it the Stranger Things, be it The Boys, be it, you know, Squid Games, be it like the Hunger Games movies, the Potter universe, the Star Trek universe, the Star Wars universe, Marvel, DC. You know, like there's a billion things to be into, and then they bring back classic properties. You know, it's never ending. And you know, I always just find what you enjoy. Don't hate watch. You know, it's and don't rage about what you don't like and stuff. There's so much cool stuff out there in the world. Like, take in what you want to see, because you're gonna miss out on cool stuff if you don't. You know, and you know, the nerds truly did inherit the earth. You know, I'm 43 years old. You know, I grew up. It was not cool in the early 90s to not be into sport or not be into grunge and not be into this, and to say that you were into nerdy stuff. It was the minority. If you went into a comic book shop, it was like you looked around to make sure nobody saw you going in there. You'd rather get caught going into an adult cinema. You know, like it was not cool to be a nerd. And, you know, and you look at the early 90s, and I always pointed out of, like, you know, weird movies like Dick Tracy or The Shadow. You know, The Crow was the exception of like being really cool, and it had the mythos of Brandon Lee and stuff. But, you know, comic book movies were not a thing. And if they were a thing, they probably weren't good. Blade was the exception to the rule at the time. And obviously, I'm not taking away from Batman 89 and Batman Returns, but, the Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, no good. And now there's almost a demand of good quality content. And if it's not up to scratch, people won't tolerate it.
Yep.
It has to be good. And it's, and everybody is now aware of nerd culture, whether they get that it's nerd culture or not, or whether they just think it's just part of what we do. It is nerd culture. It's it definitely is, be it books, be it comics, be it movies, be it music, it's infiltrated into everything.
Yeah,
and
the Marvel movies now are like they're pretty much the biggest movie every time they come out. Game of Thrones, I think, really sort of, it was the one that took nerddom to the mainstream, where people that wouldn't normally watch like a Lord of the Rings or a high fantasy show, they were watching zombies and dragons and things flying around. Like, that's fun.
Yeah, and The Walking Dead is another example. Like, I'm a big baby. I'm not into horror or scary zombies and stuff like that. I get scared and have nightmares. But like that's out there. Like, that is like a huge television show. And I even think, like, I know they weren't hugely successful, but don't sleep on Netflix's Daredevil, which is now on Disney Plus. Was an amazing series, and they're going to bring back Charlie Cox's Daredevil. Spoiler alert, already have. And
what a cameo that was too.
What was great was nobody in the cinema reacted but me. Like, you're bringing out the other two Spider-Men, the cinema erupted. Charlie Cox is in there. I'm like, Daredevil. And everybody's like, what?
What is this going on about?
But you missed out. Like, you should have been watching it. Like, because that series was awesome. Not Iron Fist, no good, but that sort of world building that they did there was really cool. And like, we're living in a time that there's a Game of Thrones prequel about to come out, and there's not much buzz about it. It's so competitive in that thing. Like, I sort of forgot that it's coming out, and I know people didn't love how Game of Thrones ended, and it sort of got messy because the books weren't finished and stuff. We could wax lyrical on that forever, but you can't take away from what a pop culture phenomenon Game of Thrones was. You're 100% right. And, it's like a gateway drug into nerd fandom.
Yep.
And I say that lovingly, not in a negative way. I hosted for years a podcast called Geek Dudes. Like, I embrace being a geek and a nerd. And it's just mainstream, and it's not uncool. Like, I've got a teenage daughter, and she didn't see Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness at the cinema, and she felt FOMO and pressure from her friends about not seeing it. That would not have occurred when I was in high school.
No.
It just those movies would have been viewed as kid stuff.
Yep.
Well, they wouldn't have made
100%.
that movie. They would have dumbed it down. It would have had to be for kids. They would have had to make toys for it aimed at kids. Where now we see adult collector on action figures. Like Big W's having a big toy sale at the moment. I'm a big nerd. I go into the toy aisle. The main properties: Transformers, He-Man, Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, well,
they are, and like Marvel and DC have a presence as well, but and Star Wars. Like,
yep.
What do they have in common? They were all toy lines when I was a kid in the 80s. And that's what they are now. And Lego was big back then too. Lego is probably the evergreen thing that never goes away. But all of this stuff has remained relevant and has remained cool. And I do wonder when Steam is going to run out, but I think with streaming services and the way we're taking content now, it's going to be never ending.
And as you said,
I'm all good with it.
As you said, like, the audience now is very demanding. You can't just slap a name brand on something. So you can't just go back and be like, even the Transformers movies, they were not the greatest, and they just they put that Transformers name on there, but yeah, the audience was very vocal about these aren't good.
The
These have
first
gone on,
one,
they've got progressively worse.
yeah, the first one, you were like, oh, they made a Transformers movie. Cool. Not perfect, but they made a Transformers movie. Then I remember one of them, like maybe the third or fourth, it just wouldn't end. I was sitting in a movie and I remember going, this, and I never do this. I was like, when is this movie going to end? Like, what's going on? And that's when they were doing the big play for the Chinese market because there was so much money to be
Mhm.
made in China. And I get it. But it was like, can you also maybe make a half decent movie while you're at it and not be so shameless? Because it's such a cool property. But then what's weird is they make this small Bumblebee movie and it was the best Transformers movie of the lot.
Yep.
Wasn't the most successful Transformers movie, but it definitely was the best Transformers movie. I hope they get it right. You know, I hear they're heading into sort of like the Beast Wars era, which is not
Yep.
my era of Transformers, but I'll give it a go. If it's good, it's good.
And then like
Um,
we got the Detective Pikachu movie, which was like touching
better
on
than
that
it should have
Pokemon
ever
property,
been.
and it was amazing. Shouldn't have been that good.
Sonic's good.
Sonic,
Sonic, like I defy anybody to watch, even Sonic 2. Like they're better than they should have been. But what I love about the beauty of Sonic is, and I'm a Sega kid, so I'm all for Sonic, is they were smart. Let's get Jim Carrey and tell him to be Jim Carrey.
Mhm.
And you have to be entertained by Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey. And he's just in there. And look, they listen to criticism. People saw that first trailer and have you watched the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie?
Yes, yes, very good.
How how was that good? Like it should not have been good, and it was amazing. Like it was like a modern day Who Framed Roger Rabbit,
Yep,
and it was so meta and like ugly Sonic being in it and stuff like
my
it
favorite
was just
cameo of the
amazing.
lot.
Yeah, it was just amazing. But there were so many cameos in that movie. I didn't know where to look.
Mm.
Like the most bizarre one, like in the school gym at the start of that movie, Blaster from the Transformers, who was the not Soundwave, he was the Autobot Ghetto Blaster. He's sitting in there, and it's like that's random. Like like that's a deep cut. And it's like the fact that this stuff is out there and it's so good. It's yeah, it really is remarkable. And the fact we can go, the Jurassic Park movies are no good, we're not going to see them. Ready Player One was disappointing. We can call them on it. But there's not just this expectation that we should be lucky we get it. Now
Yes,
it's entertainers.
yep,
Like, what are you going to do to top what we've seen? Because at this point, it feels like we've seen everything. You got to think everybody went and saw Avatar. Everybody, highest grossing movie of all time. And it was sold on technology when you think about it. It was that gimmick of 3D is here and this is the future. It wasn't. Like I got a 3D capable TV, put those glasses on once. Never watched 3D at home. It just didn't take off. But now it's at the point of these Avatar movies that have taken forever to come out. We're like, Avatar's coming out. We don't want to see that. And it will be interesting. Like, does it bomb? Because
yes.
I think it
I'm
will.
interested to see if we get. I think they've announced what 4 or 5.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
interested to see if we get the following 3 after the one that's due this year.
Sam Worthington woke up and went, "Oh, like I've got work." Like let's make it. But once again, it's weird because who was looking for an Avatar movie? What did you make of the Matrix,
I
the
didn't.
most recent one?
The most recent one, I didn't mind it. I quite
I'm the
enjoyed it, but
same.
there were
I
I
heard
can see where
I
people had
heard
issues
bad
with it, but
review.
I enjoyed it.
I heard the bad reviews, and I was like, "This is fine. Like, it's not revolutionary like the first Matrix." But I was entertained. Like, I thought it was fine. People hated that movie. It,
Mm,
and and that's what's interesting in we're so caught up in, and even people are now where they're listening or watching to hear what we have to say. We're so caught up in the discourse of everybody else as well. It used to be your small group of friends. You talk about, do you like this movie? No, I didn't like this movie. I love this movie. You based friendships on those connections. And but now it's almost like you're waiting to see what the world thinks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to a little bit get back to focusing on what we think. And that's what I try and do with Star Wars, because I noticed heavily in the Star Wars community, nobody hates Star Wars like Star Wars fans. And it would bum me out. Like, it would get to me of like, but I don't hate it. Like, why do you hate it? And it makes me sad that you hate it. And I had to unplug myself from that and go, no, I need to form my own opinion. If I don't love it, I don't love it. I'm not going to force that on other people. And if I love it, I'm not going to try convincing you that you should love it, but I don't have to take in your hate.
Yep.
And I I try my best to have that approach with fandom in general. You know, be it music, be it, I'm a Guns N' Roses fan. Nobody hates Axl Rose more than Guns N' Roses fans. Be it pop culture, be it professional wrestling. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, find what you like and that's what you focus on. And if the discourse is positive and you can get a positive experience from it, by all means. But the second it starts hindering your enjoyment of something, it's the discourse you've got to walk away from, not what you like.
Yeah, I found like social media has been amazing for finding
Yeah.
people that like things that you like, but yeah, you really do need to curate those following lists to make sure that you're not getting all that hatred coming in, because like so just to sort of get back to the main topic, and we'll close out very shortly.
Yep.
A few little trivia things I read up in preparation for this episode. In the episode 2 of Obi-Wan, the girl that gives Obi-Wan the spice and says, "I was somebody's daughter once," actually Ewan McGregor's real life daughter.
Yes. Yep.
Which was a very cool little moment.
Yeah.
And then in preparation for this series, Hayden Christensen really put in a lot of work. He went back and watched all of the Clone Wars, all of Rebels, to prepare for this return as Anakin/Darth, which was something he probably didn't need to do, but he was committed to making sure that, yes, people hated me in those prequels. Let's make sure that they are happy that I'm coming back.
Mm. And when you watch things like Star Wars Celebration, it's warming to see him come out and get a pop,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and just get embraced. And you see him smile, and it's like, oh, they don't hate me, you know. And I think people forget that these people felt hated.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And to be
and
honest,
these are real people. They're not characters on a screen.
No, and their feelings were hurt. You know, the dude walked away from acting, like, you know, and to see him come back and be happy and embrace Star Wars again. And as you said, like, watch stuff he didn't have to watch. You know, he didn't just oh yeah, I'm going to turn up, put the suit on me, I'll be fine. You know, he wanted to see what's been going on. I love that. I think it's really cool.
And then obviously, like we mentioned, we've got the 4 series coming up: Andor, Ahsoka, Acolyte, and Lando. But we've had a number of series already. Where do you rank these series, like in terms of 1 to what, 5 or 6 now that we've had?
Now I've got to pick between my favorite children. Look, I think it's hard to go past The Mandalorian as number 1. You know, it was groundbreaking.
Do you split the seasons 1 and 2, or do you put them just together?
No, I put them together. You know, glad Gina Carano is gone, but I'm not going to get political. But you know, I think, you know, one of the all-time greatest Star Wars moments is the end of episode 1, and we get the Grogu reveal. Nobody saw that coming, and it was incredible. You know, and they bookend it because at the end of season 2, you get the Luke reveal. You know, these 2 things that I certainly didn't know were going to come, and I got emotional at the Luke thing. I'm a crier. I teared up at the end of Obi-Wan. Like I held it together, and Qui-Gon got me. Of all things, Qui-Gon got me. But yeah, you know, I keep the Mandalorian together. Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett both had their pluses and minuses, but I think overall, just from an emotional standpoint, you have to put Kenobi ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that last episode alone. You
know, yeah, for me, episode 5 was the one.
Okay. Yep.
That was the one where I was like, okay, well, I'm definitely in on this show now.
Yeah. Yeah. But from a fun perspective, Book of Boba Fett was fantastic. You know, like Tamura Morrison is so charismatic. And I get people go, that's not Boba Fett. But the Mandalorian's already doing Boba Fett better than Boba Fett, you know, of somebody being stoic. What did we want? Another stoic Mandalorian stomping around? You know, we've got that. You know, let Tamura Morrison be charismatic and have fun. Let him see a baby Rancor led by Danny Trejo, and he pats it and goes, "Can I ride it?" Like, if you don't like that, you don't like fun. You know, and it wasn't perfect, but you know, there were twin huts getting carried around. There's Black Chrysanthemum, you know, a giant evil Wookiee bounty hunter that throws hands. You know, there was so much to love in it. Was it perfect? Mm-mm. You know, but even the Tusken Raiders story was a really cool story, you know, learning more about their culture and everything like that. So I'd probably go Mandalorian, Kenobi, Book of Boba Fett. And if I was going to go order, probably the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian, Kenobi, Book of Boba Fett. I probably need a rewatch of season 2 of Mandalorian because I definitely watched season 1 a few times. Season 2, there was a lot Marvel-wise to watch. I didn't go back and watch it quite as much. I usually give them all a few watch throughs. What about you? How do you rank it?
So I put season 2 of Mandalorian as my top of the list.
Okay. Yep.
Then I went Obi, and I snuck in Star Wars Visions because I just loved the creativity that show had in terms of telling Star Wars stories, but every episode just having crazy art really styles. Cool. I loved that.
The Elder in particular spoke to me. I thought that was really good. Yeah, Visions was rad.
And then I went Boba Fett and then season 1 of Mando, just because I think it was quite slow at the beginning, and then it built, but I think it laid the foundations for season 2 to be as amazing as it was. Yeah, and then at the bottom, I put Bad Batch, but that was only because
I forgot about the Bad Batch.
It didn't I enjoyed it, but it didn't hook me in where it became appointment viewing.
It's a pure kid show. You know, I'm lucky I've got the excuse of an 8-year-old son, and we have daddy-son moment of we're going to sit there and watch the Bad Batch, and his name's Hunter, and there's a character called Hunter in the show. So, you know, he loved that. And there's fun things to take away from it, but I could understand why it's not appointment viewing for somebody. I don't disagree with your rankings. But for me, I've gotten something from all of them. You know, I certainly haven't had anything where I go, that's completely skippable. You know, it's all been watchable. And, you know, it gives me hope, you know, we're going to see Grand Admiral Thrawn in a show. You know, it's wild that's going to happen. You know, for Rebels fans, they're going to get live action Ezra Bridger and Hera and Sabine, and, you know, they're going to have their fandom validated, you know, and that's what I think Kenobi did. It validated a fandom for prequel fans. And perhaps The Mandalorian validated fandom for OT fans that felt the sequel trilogy wasn't what they wanted. You know, and that's what I'm saying. Star Wars has got something for everyone. And you've just got to find what's your Star Wars and enjoy the hell out of it. And just give the other stuff a miss if it's not for you. I'll watch it all. I'm a sucker. I'm in on everything. Resistance was the one thing I couldn't get through. It was hard to get in Australia, and I, you know, trying to look at torrents and stuff like that, I was like, I don't have time for this. So I never finished Resistance. It's probably the only thing I haven't finished. I've even watched Lego specials. But look at me. I have dragged you into a famously long Criss Fresh podcast appearance. I'm notorious for it. I defy anybody to get out of a podcast appearance by me in 45 minutes or less. It's for challenge.
In terms of the upcoming shows, is the Acolyte the one that's top of your list for excitement levels?
No, probably Ahsoka.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see where Ahsoka goes. We know the Mandalorian is going to be. I think we know what to expect from the Mandalorian. I say that, and then they'll surprise us. But he's going to go. He's going to find Mandalore. And there's going to be a showdown over who's going to lead the Mandalorian's resurgence. Ahsoka is what interests me, of how do they bring Grand Admiral Thrawn into it? Classic villain. He has the potential to be a big deal in the Star Wars universe if they get it right. I liked Rebels, so getting to see that. The Acolyte, I don't really know what to expect. I checked out the first High Republic book. It was fine, but it didn't grab me enough that I go, I'm all in on this. I just don't have time. That's, as we were talking about content earlier, I listen to audiobooks just because it's easier, but I've got podcasts to listen to. I've got so much content. It's like, no, these books, if they bring it to screen, I'll check it out. And they're going to bring it to screen. Yep. What about you? What's
So Ahsoka is definitely at the top of the list, I think, because we've seen her in the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And I've heard, she's amazing in Rebels. But I also think the Lando show could be really fun.
If we get it.
Like, if it comes through, I think it will be very, very fun.
I think they're going to have trouble getting Donald Glover to commit. What I hope with the Lando show is maybe some of the story threads they were going to touch on in Solo, maybe they could do in TV. Because, they had plans for Kira, Emilia Clarke's character. Obviously, she was going to lead the Crimson Dawn, and we could have gang factions and everything like that. I think a mobster Star Wars series would be cool. Yep. And bring the Hutts in there, get Jabba on there. They finally made the Hutts look okay. I thought the twins looked pretty cool, so I'm confident they could do Jabba and have him look all right. Bring him back. Like, who doesn't want to see him? Get Salacious Crumb sitting there. Like, bring it all back. And I think it's interesting, and I think they'll get there. They've got time, and Disney Plus, they're going to always want content to drive people there. It's huge competition between the streaming services. That is where the battleground is. Everything is going to be streaming. Nobody's watching TV.
And Disney's never going to run out of money, so I don't think we've ever got the issue of them just being like, oh, we're just going to cut this now because it's costing us too much.
No, they're making a fortune.
Alrighty. Thank you everyone for listening to the commentary booth. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on podcast services and on YouTube. You can follow Criss on Instagram at Criss Fresh, CRISS Fresh. And you can follow me on social media at JamieApps Media and at Pario Magazine. Thank you so much for taking the time, Criss, and good luck with the next Renegades shows, and hopefully I will be back in Melbourne soon.
July 30th. We're back at Essendon. Wrestling returns to Essendon. And thank you for having me. The magazine is sweet. I am a sucker for print magazines. And you're doing cool stuff, man. Keep it up. Thank you.